Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Walero.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys, spreading the word about trying to get rid of the Internal Revenue Service by getting rid of the income tax that it is charged with administering and enforcing. And that's the only way you're going to get rid of the IRS.
That's right.
Is to get rid of the income tax. And the only way to get rid of the income tax is to pass the fair tax, and that's what we're here for.
Yep.
How cool is that?
Those people that say, well, I'm going to propose a flat tax that will get rid of the IRS. Not possible.
Yeah, I'm going to
if it's a flat tax,
tax,
still an income tax.
And your tax return will be a postcard which everybody can read as it goes to the mail, and you send it to the IRS. What's wrong with that picture?
Yeah, well, they're attempting to hack the IRS computers like 1 million times a day. Might as well put it on a postcard and just get it out there.
Oh, well.
Okay, I think not. Anyways.
We say this a lot. We're going to have some fun on today's episode of FAIRtax Power Radio. We have dug up some tax humor. And of course, we're not going to sit here and be comedians. We're educators, not comedians. But sometimes you can use humor to make a serious point. And when you're making fun of something, making fun of something, that is a good way to say this is not a good thing to have.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we make fun of people that we respect. Except for the IRS.
Except for the IRS. That's true. But we do respect Jim Bennett.
All right. You want to do a grassroots first?
That's what I said. We do respect Jim Bennett. That's your cue.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. Let me put another battery in this hearing aid. Okay, today's Grassroots Corner. We're recording this on November 1st, and this just happens to be the Grassroots Corner for November 1st from Jim Bennett.
How cool.
Who is a director on the board of directors for the national group, the Americans for Fair Taxation, and he is also the coordinator, the grassroots coordinator for that group. Democratic presidential candidates are dropping in proposals to make themselves stand out from the pack, and these proposals can present opportunities for us to plug the fair tax. Okay, I haven't seen a lot of their proposals anyways, let's go ahead here.
Yes.
One proposal comes from Andrew Yang, a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for every American adult over 18.
So that's a guaranteed annual income of $12,000 a year. This guy. Okay.
And we're going to talk about how they pay for that in the next episode. But anyways, we recently seized on this proposal as a starter to contact the Yang campaign because of its superficial similarity to the prebate. Okay, we thought that the Yang campaign might want to take a look. Okay, obviously there are differences in our proposals. The Yang campaign is suggesting that its freedom dividend go to only citizens. All right, the prebate will go to every household whose members are lawful residents. That means citizens and lawful residents. Okay,
yes.
So the prebate would not go to non-citizens. All right, so we're similar there. Another difference is that the freedom dividend is an unearned benefit, otherwise known as an entitlement. Okay, the prebate is not an entitlement; it is a refund. All right, we've talked about this many times before. The prebate is not an entitlement; it is a refund because we don't want you to have to pay the fair tax on the basic necessities of life. All right, under the fair tax, which is a consumption tax, you shouldn't have to pay taxes on what it costs to keep you and your family alive, the basic necessities. So we're going to refund the taxes you paid on the basic necessities with the family consumption allowance, also known as the prebate. Okay, so let's see if the Yang campaign responds to us. At least those who see our outreach are starting to see us as a nonpartisan and genuinely interested in improving our government as it is funded. All right, ours is indeed a serious tax proposal. So they're trying. I mean, we are nonpartisan. The fair tax is nonpartisan. Everybody should be on board with this campaign.
Yes, it does not advance or hinder either side's political agenda, unless your political agenda is to use the tax code for social engineering, like we talked about last week.
Yeah.
But we've already covered that. We won't go there anymore. But one other thing that we always do here on FAIRtax Power Radio, we keep an eye on Congress.gov. You go in there, you type in the string Internal Revenue Code, just enclose those 3 words in quotes, hit the search button, and see, this time when you do that, that search now brings back 1,173 hits. And there are a couple of real goodies that were just introduced here in the last few days. I like this one.
1,173
hits
proposals to change the tax code, and they haven't even been in session a year yet.
Yes, one of which is H.R. 4926, which was to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to allow for a credit against tax for sales at retail of safe firearm storage devices. So that sounds like if you buy a gun safe, you get a tax credit. So
that's what it sounds like to me. Yeah.
So if you don't and you leave your guns lying around, you could have a problem. Huh. But why do we need that in the tax code?
Yeah.
I mean, just common sense. People who are responsible firearm owners know that they better keep those things locked away.
Absolutely.
So the kids don't get into them. Yeah. And here's another one. This is the nepotism special. To append this is H.R. 4922, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide a tax credit for angel investors. And Ms. Producer looked that up, and angel investors are usually family members of folks who are trying to start a business in startup businesses, and to provide a credit for wages paid by startup businesses to their first employees, i.e. themselves, and for other purposes. Good luck.
Yeah. So Congress is constantly making proposals to change the tax code, to modify American behavior in the way that they think is appropriate, okay? Whereas the tax code, and we talked about this at length in the last episode, the tax code should be there just to raise funds for the federal government. Yeah, pure and simple.
If they want to promote or discourage a particular behavior, there are other ways to do that. You don't have to add to the 76,000 pages of tax code to do that.
And that's what these things do. Now, these are just proposals, and not many of them will become law, but still, it gives you an idea of the mindset.
Into the mindset of the Congress critters.
Yeah.
You got a neat little meme on your computer. It says, a gas station. We collect taxes, federal, provincial, and local, and sell gasoline as a sideline.
That kind of gets us into the next part.
That's pretty good.
I saw something on one of my favorite sites is Babylon Bee, and I saw something on there that I thought was really funny and related to the tax code. All right, this little story. Now, Babylon Bee claims to be the world's best satire site.
That is not news.
It's not real news.
It is satire and commentary, but when you satirize something and comment about it, there's usually a pretty good reason to do that.
Yep, and I think you'll recognize this first one here.
Okay.
Again, this is from Babylon Bee, February 8th of 2018, babylonbee.com. Local couple welcomes adorable little tax credit into the world. Fairfield, PA. Local parents Lois and Zoe Draper welcomed an adorable 8-pound, 5-ounce, 20-inch long tax credit into the world. Sources at Mercy Hospital confirmed today. Thursday. All right. The exhausted but beaming parents welcomed the newborn child tax credit into the world at 2:35 a.m. after a difficult 14-hour labor.
I hope it was worth it.
It's a beautiful little $2,000 rebate, the father said, as he gazed at the bundle of guaranteed tax refunds for the next 17 years. In a quiet moment after the flurry of activity, as the tax credit was being delivered, the couple snuggled with the precious little refund from the money that they give to the government each year, and wax poetic over what his life would bring. Just think, we could put a down payment on a new car with the money that we don't have to give the government to fuel its bloated, inefficient hierarchy, Zoe Draper whispered as she stroked the child tax credit's precious little cheek. What a special moment.
Now, again, that probably did not actually happen, because, again, the Babylon Bee is a satire site.
No, but it does.
But it gives you some insight. Oh, excuse me. Hang on.
And I can tell you that my wife and I have a granddaughter. She's going to be, 14 this December, right? Mm-hmm. She was born on December 30. And yes, my son did make the comment, she was born just in time to be a tax credit for that year.
Just in time to be a tax. Yeah, if you're January 1st or 2nd, you doggone just missed it. So,
yeah, so anyways, yes, that's on people's mind. Yeah, their child is a tax credit because they're trying to minimize their tax burden as much as possible. You know, having a lot of children might be an expensive way to do it, but anyways.
Well, if we had the fair tax, it'd be easy. Just not buy expensive stuff. Buy used cars instead of new ones. Buy a pre-owned house instead of a new one. There are lots of ways to pay less fair tax that are a lot less complicated and a lot less expensive in the long run. So we need to get rid of the tax credit stuff for kids, and they're just let kids be kids.
Yeah, because I mean, still with the income tax, you have to live within their guidelines. With the fair tax, you organize your own business. You want to buy new stuff, you pay the fair tax. You want to buy used stuff, you can legally avoid the fair tax. You are in control with the fair tax.
Oh, so, yes.
You want to do this next one?
Oh, about there trying to give the IRS some religion?
Yes, please.
This is January 23rd. This is about a year, almost 2 years old. January 23rd, 2018 is the date on this one. It says, upon receiving the necessary forms from his employer to begin to file to pay his federal taxes, local man Kyle Jacobs scrawled an imprecatory psalm across the Internal Revenue Service's 1040. Sources close to the man confirmed. So he said after he saw how much of his money was forcibly being taken from him and redistributed to whatever cause the state saw fit, he was moved to point to the anguish and called on the Lord to smite his oppressors. Where have we heard that before? And according to those close to the situation, he wrote a song, scrawled a curse of judgment on the IRS form, calling for God to send the IRS down to the very pits of Sheol. Which you can translate that hell if you want to. Now, when I filed to hand over a large percentage of my income to the government, I suddenly realized how David felt when he wrote Psalm 55. He was betrayed, stabbed in the back by a close friend, and I was forced to give the first 3 months of my labor to the state under threat of imprisonment or death. Now, how about that? It's practically the same thing. So, yeah. So you're right on your IRS. I'll tell you what I do, which is pretty cool, though. Every time, this is now the election season's cranking up, and I get a lot of political fundraising stuff. A lot of them are just, disguised as surveys.
Yeah, right. Yep.
I'll take a big Sharpie and I'll write on that survey, pass the fair tax and don't ask me for another dime until you do. Add a couple of prebate cards and send it. That's worth putting my own stamp on.
Yeah.
A lot of those places make you send your own stamp on that. If you can do that to a business reply envelope, that's even better. But that would suggest that everyone who likes to see the fair tax passed, and especially these candidates who send out their petitions, they want to qualify for the ballot without paying the filing fee. They want to get petitions. I'll sign your petition if you'll co-sponsor the fair tax, and you never hear from them again. Because I live in a district that is represented by just such a person.
Oh, yes.
He did. He sent me his petitions, and I sent him back a palm card.
All right. So, anyways, the idea again for this episode is to use humor to bring out the the strengths of the fair tax and the problems with the current income tax.
Point out the fallacies of the income tax.
Yeah.
Now you've got a wonderful little quote here from former Senator Russell Long.
Yes, and we have mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. A tax loophole is something that benefits the other guy. If it benefits you, it's tax reform.
Then the fair tax is really good tax reform because that benefits everybody.
That really does, yeah. And that quote, I mean, Congressman Long, I'm not sure if he was a congressman or a senator, to tell you the truth.
I think he was a senator, but I'm not 100% certain on that.
Anyways, it speaks to the idea of Congress picking winners and losers. I mean, they do that with the tax code. They want to befriend a certain part of the society, or a certain business or something, so they propose a tax credit or some kind of a tax change that will be in their, to benefit them. Mm-hmm. And that's not what the tax code should be used for.
No.
So, all right. Anyways. And this one is kind of generic here.
What's the difference between a fine and a tax?
Okay, well, a fine is a tax for doing wrong. and a tax is a fine for doing well.
We've talked about that one, how sometimes you earn more, you make more money, it pushes you up into another tax bracket, and even though you're grossing more, you're bringing home less because the government is taking a bigger chunk from you. So I get a raise and I bring home less money. How stupid is that?
Yeah.
But that's the kind of tax code we've got.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me, I don't know what's going on with me today.
Yeah. Get some more of that cheer wine.
Gotta have some more cheer wine here.
All right, I found a website called workjoke.com, and they have a section on tax jokes. Some of them were a little risque. I'm not going to use those.
Don't use those. No.
All right. The tax advisor had just read the story of Cinderella to his 4-year-old daughter for the first time. The little girl was fascinated by the story, especially the part where the pumpkin turns into a golden coach. Suddenly, she piped up and said, "Daddy, when the pumpkin turned into a golden coach, would that be classed as income or long-term capital gains?" Because you have to know that stuff for your tax purposes. And obviously, the 4-year-old was very interested in that.
I would guess that would be income because you don't realize the capital gain until you sell an asset.
Yeah, that's right. So,
but that's it.
And we don't know when Cinderella sold the coach.
And of course, the income and the capital gains are taxed at different rates. More complication.
But it shows you how the tax code has kind of permeated all aspects of our society. And if you have kids and they're coming up and they're getting, they're teenagers and they're in their 20s and so forth, whether they go to college or not, at some point they're going to start working and they got to deal with the income tax. And you're going to have to probably help them, steer them in the right direction when they have to tackle that income tax, when they go off on their own and they're not a dependent of yours. It's a fact of life. It's not a very pleasant fact of life, but it's a fact of life. It permeates everything.
Yes, and it's the only system that anybody working today has ever known, and it does not have to be that way.
Right.
That's it. The Congress critters have just ingrained into everybody's thinking that the income tax is the only way to do it. No, it's not. We can get rid of it. The country lasted quite well for the first few 100 years or so of its founding without an income tax. The founding fathers knew that was a bad idea, and they outlawed that in the original Constitution for a reason.
Yep. That's right.
Then they messed it up. Okay.
So we could do very well without it. The difference between the short form and the long form?
I know.
Okay.
If you use the short form, the government gets your money. If you use the long form, your tax preparer gets your money.
Bingo.
But there are no short forms or long forms at all for individuals under the fair tax.
That's right.
So that's it.
Yeah. So, and that joke speaks to the cost of the tax code. Now, for individuals, you might buy the software depending on how complex your taxes are. I mean, Bob and I are retired. Our taxes are pretty simple. We buy the software, we generate it out, send it in electronically.
It still takes a couple hours to do it.
Still takes time. You have to do record keeping and so forth. All right. But you get into a business, and then it's another whole world of hurt. You got to keep very accurate records. You probably have to have the help of a CPA or tax attorney, maybe not an attorney, but a tax preparer, and it's going to cost you. I can tell you that when my wife and I had our truck leasing business, it cost anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a year just for our tax preparer.
Over and above what you owed.
Yeah,
that's called compliance costs.
Yeah. And sometimes we got money back, and sometimes we had to pay in. Didn't make any difference. You still had to pay the tax preparer because it needed to be accurate. We needed to be absolutely, on top of things. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't possible for my wife and I keep track of all that stuff. You have to turn it over to a professional, and none of that exists with the fair tax.
Absolutely.
You go to the store, you buy something, the tax is included, it's written there on the receipt, you pay the store, and you're done. That's it.
Yeah. The retailers have a little form that they would fill out, but it's largely done by computer.
And that's very simple, and I can attest to that too, because we had to pay sales tax on the lease fees we collected from the trucks. It took minutes each month, if that, to fill that out. So.
Okay, we've asked this on FAIRtax Power Radio before. What's the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion?
The jail walls.
Yeah, one's legal and one's not.
Yeah, and that's if the evader is caught. Another problem we have with the current income tax is that we got huge evasion, over 20%. Over 20% of the income tax is being evaded, and people getting away with it. All right, with the over 100 million returns that the IRS has to keep track of, there's no possible way they can check each one. So they have to randomly go out and randomly audit people, which means for the most part, they're auditing 80%. You know, the people they're auditing are 80% of them are 100% legal. Catching up with the people who are evading it is very difficult.
Yeah, and the IRS has even admitted that it's a lot easier to go after people that won't fight back.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, it's shameful. All right, and it's all a result of this crazy income tax
that we need to get rid of by jerking it out by the roots and passing the fair tax. Now, I like this one too. For every tax problem, there's a solution, which is straightforward, uncomplicated, and wrong.
Yep, and that's the way it goes. And that speaks to that survey, not survey, but the where they gave the tax information to those 50 different tax preparers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you want to speak to that one?
Oh yeah, this was back in the 80s. I mean, almost 40 years ago, when the tax code was only about half the size it is today. You know, 40-some thousand pages instead of 76. And Money Magazine gave the exact same information on a hypothetical family to 50 different tax preparers with the simple question: how much federal income tax does this family owe? And it wasn't a hugely complicated thing. You know, not a lot of stuff, just standard things that most families would deal with. And they asked 50 tax preparers what this family owed, and they got 49 different answers.
And that is typical for this tax code. It's impossible. I mean, there's so much to it. You can, like Bob said, 50 different tax preparers got 49 different answers. All right. There's one that I want to get in here.
Which is?
The income tax has made more liars out of Americans than golf has. Will Rogers. Now, keep in mind...
Do golfers ever lie? You're a golfer.
Oh, no. I don't have to, because my golf is so terrible, it's not worth lying about. Okay.
Oh, now my golf is worse than yours. I haven't played in decades.
Will Rogers passed away in 1935. The income tax was only a little over 20 years old, and they were already making horrible jokes about it. Mm-hmm. You know, so it shows you what happened. I mean, as soon as it got passed, they said, well, it's just going to be a small tax on the most wealthy Americans. That didn't last long, did it?
Nope.
No, it didn't. And Will Rogers and others were making jokes about it. But in some ways, it's not really funny.
No, it isn't. But this is. A visitor from Holland was chatting with his American friend and was jokingly explaining about the red, white, and blue on the Netherlands flag. Our flag symbolizes our taxes, he says. We get red when we talk about them. We get white when we get the tax bill. And we get blue after we pay them. And the American says, same for us, only we see stars as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
that really does summarize it.
It does.
Yeah.
How many people actually like the tax code?
Yeah, raise your hands.
No, if you're a card-carrying member of the IRS fan club, let me say, I don't think there's anybody out there. Oh, wait a minute, there's a lobbyist back there going, yeah. So, oh man, but yeah, the tax code is I think it's designed to be as imperceptible as it possibly can be. And we're going to get into that a bit in our next episode of FAIRtax Power Radio. They're going to get into some stuff that Steve Hayes dug up, which is really good, concerning why the politicians like the tax code to be as complicated as possible. And they've done a real... the government doesn't do a very good job at most things, but they've done a fantastic job at making the tax code incomprehensible.
Yeah, right. Yep. Let's see. One difference between death and taxes is that death doesn't get worse every time Congress meets.
Well,
ooh, that says a lot.
Let's see. How many proposals did we see to change the tax code here? 1,173 we saw at the beginning of the program.
Yeah. So and they just seem to love it. You know. What's the difference between a taxidermist and a tax collector? the taxidermist only takes your skin. That's credited to Mark Twain.
Oh, I like this one. There's an Internal Revenue Service agent lying on the couch at the psychiatrist's office, and the psychiatrist is telling him, "Oh, nonsense. There's no way everybody in the world hates you. Everybody in the U.S. maybe, but not everybody in the world." Yes, the Internal Revenue Service has got to be one of the most universally hated agencies on God's green earth ever. And the FAIRtax gets rid of it. I mean, puts it flat out of business, drives the proverbial stake through its heart, and the FAIRtax is the only way to get rid of the IRS, and so there won't be any more IRS agents for the country to hate if we have the FAIRtax. But that's it. Everybody hates the IRS. And I don't understand why more people are not on board with the FAIRtax, because again, it's the only way to get rid of it. The only way to get rid of the IRS is to get rid of the income tax.
Yeah, that's
right. It.
And I think one of the reasons that the IRS is so universally hated and feared is because Congress has authorized them to ignore the Bill of Rights. Here we have this great Constitution, the first time on the planet that the individual is made sovereign. You got the Bill of Rights, and what do? Tell the IRS, don't worry about the Bill of Rights. You know, you do what you need to.
Yes.
It's not good.
The government that robs Peter to pay Paul can always depend on Paul's vote.
Yeah, exactly.
We've seen that before.
George Bernard Shaw, all right? Again, it sets up Congress for picking winners and losers. That should not be the purpose of the tax code. Although I think for a lot of people that serve in Washington, that is the purpose of the tax code, all right? Raising money for the government seems to be a necessary side advantage.
Yeah, raising money for their campaign coffers is what it's all about.
Takes precedence.
That's where the lobbyists come in and they buy these tax favors. And again, if you look at congress.gov on a weekly basis like we do, you will see, and you could just imagine, you know, the one about the firearm storage devices, you could imagine what kind of lobbyist was behind that one.
Yeah.
So.
Anyways, we got a couple of minutes left here. I'm going to do a...
Oh, that's funny.
FAIRtax logo. Did you have another one that you wanted to get in there?
I did not. I think we've pretty well made fun of the IRS and pointed out the serious thing that the IRS needs to go away. Yeah, and the FAIRtax is the only way to make it go away.
And we need your help to get this done. Okay, so let everybody know about the FAIRtax. Let everybody know about the various websites. The national website is fairtax.org. Very simple, fairtax.org. Each of the state organizations, most of the state organizations have a website also. You can look them up on fairtax.org. And let people know about FAIRtax Power Radio. We need to get more people watching this show. We have a weekly half-hour show. We do our best to keep you informed and somewhat entertained. All right. Obviously, we're not comedians, but
but I do want to get this in. I was having lunch in a restaurant before we came over here, and a fella at the next table saw my FAIRtax logo here on my shirt. Yeah. And he looked and says, if you wanted to be sure that that's what it was, he was familiar with it. He says, "Man, it's good to see that movement is still alive." He was familiar with the FAIRtax. He liked it, but he was one of the millions who seem to think there's nothing happening with it. But it is. We're still here. We're going to be here every week, FAIRtax Power Radio. We're going to be having Steve Hayes' Chairman's Report on FAIRtax Friday every week. There is still a lot of motion going on. The fact that you don't hear about it in the media doesn't mean that it's not going on. And this gentleman was quite pleased to know that there was still some momentum behind the FAIRtax, and we're still working on it.
Somebody on, I can't remember if it was on Facebook or how it came to us, but they said, keep in mind, the FAIRtax is the most important tax reform you've never heard of.
Indeed.
And unfortunately, that is the case with a number of people. So, anyways,
Miss Producer is handing up a sign for you.
Yep, FAIRtaxLogoStore.org. FAIRtaxLogoStore.org. We got these things, all right? You need to order some of these, all right? These are great. Take these to your town hall, and because they're plastic, you can slip them in. You know, you're not supposed to bring signs and so forth. Let's let them know about our brand new yard signs, okay? I'll put a... Yep, these things are great. These are now in the FAIRtax Logo Store. All right, we have campaign buttons that you can order. All right, these are great. My wife always wears these on the strap of her purse, and like she says, she's gotten into the habit of putting 2 of them on there. So if somebody's interested, she just gives them one. You know, it's a great idea. Okay.
How generous of you.
Yes.
I'm sure they appreciate it.
Great idea. All right. We have. I'll get my little list out here.
Yeah.
We have the information cards.
This is what you send back to the political fundraising emails that you get.
Yep. And you can buy, this has information on both sides. You can buy a packet of them like this and keep them handy, hand them out to people and so forth. And don't forget, you know, along with the shirts and the hats and the travel mugs and so forth. And I forgot to get a tumbler, but we have these wonderful glass tumblers with the FAIRtax logo store on them. I'll put a picture of that up there. And in your FAIRtax shirt, you can keep the FAIRtax prebate cards. Size of a business card, basic information about the FAIRtax on one side, prebate schedule on the back side. All right, and there's earrings, there's tote bags, there's there's simple tote bags, there's ones like this with the zippered tote bag.
Those are nice.
Yeah, these are nice. Okay, and the umbrellas, they got the umbrellas back. I forgot to bring one in here, anyways, but I'll show you a picture of it. And go on to FAIRtaxLogoStore.org and take a look. They got tons of stuff there. That something there is gonna pique your interest. So do us a favor, purchase it, demonstrate it, whether you wear it or have it on your car or whatever, a FAIRtax bumper sticker or whatever, and show your support for the FAIRtax.
Yep.
Get it out there. Let people see that you're supporting the only real tax reform that's in Congress at this time.
Drop us a line at thefairtaxguys@gmail.com or leave us a note or a comment on our Facebook page. FairtaxGuys.com is the repository of the old FairtaX Power radio shows. You can go back and see what we've been doing.
Yep.
And check that out. And that's just about going to wrap up this edition of FairtaX Power Radio. Thank you so much for watching and or listening, whichever the case may be. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
The FairtaX Guys again reminding you that the FairtaX is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
The fair tax does not hurt the poor and does not reward the rich because it's not a straight sales tax like the sales tax we already have. The fair tax creates a level playing field by taxing everyone at the same rate at the cash register, but untaxes the household up to poverty level. This means that those living closer to the poverty level pay a lower overall tax rate, while those living a lavish lifestyle pay a higher overall tax rate. Yet the law still applies to everyone equally. This is called the prebate, which reimburses every legal American household the taxes they will have to pay on the basic necessities each month. As those basic necessities vary by household, the fair tax untaxes you and not the purchases. This keeps tax lobbyists out of the picture and keeps you in control of what you pay. Do you think the prebate will be too expensive and act just like a huge welfare program? The prebate will cost less than half of what the current deductions and exemptions cost, and operates just like the standard deduction you already take. It's your money. You're just getting it back each month rather than once a year. Everyone under the fair tax controls their own tax rate by deciding when and how much money they spend above poverty level, and thus how much they pay in taxes. To learn more, please visit fairtax.org. And be sure to like us on social media to help educate your friends and spread the word.